Hello everyone, I'm Orfo here. I'm finally managed to get some time to put together a build video for my latest version of my Conqueror build. This is a complete rework that in a sense goes back to the origins of this build, as I went back to a set that actually I used to use at the very beginning, and I'm actually quite happy that I can use it again thanks to jewelry crafting. This build, I mean, you will notice already a staff on the back of this character, and immediately you will know that it's very different from my previous build. The previous build still very much viable if you were very happy with it. I can leave a link to that build video in the description in this video. But this build pumps not only more damage than the previous one, but it does it while being a lot more tankier than the previous build. So without any further ado, let me just show you my raw stats. Now you will notice that the maximum Magicka pool is lower than the previous build. Previously it would touch the 40s, and whereas now it's slightly under 35k, but nonetheless you will still pump more damage with this build than with the previous one. The Magicka recovery is also lower, but not to worry. With this build you can sustain still very well if your playstyle is like mine, very aggressive. The previous build, again, sustain was incredibly good, and you could sustain very well even with a more passive playstyle. This one sustains equally well, but only if you are very aggressive when you play. But anyway, I'll get to that in a few moments. You will notice my maximum health is much higher. In Cyrodiil, that equals to just over 27k max health, which is great, and obviously I'm very comfortable with that max stamina pool. I don't have any problem sustaining my stamina. Spell damage, this is my back bar. On both is 3082. On my front jeweled wheel bar, it gets to 3826 with one glyph. With the other glyph, which is on an infused sword, it gets to 4k spell damage. And spell and physical resistance, 30k spell resistance and 26k physical resistance with just over 3k crit resist. My spell critical ratings will go up when I use a specific skill that we're going to be looking at. It goes up to 32%. In my opinion, critical damage in PvP, it's important, but also it's not, in the sense that most players run with full impen, so they will be prepared to mitigate a lot of your critical damage. I do know that there are a number of builds that are specifically designed to have very low crit ratings, precisely for that reason. But anyway, you can get to 32% spell critical ratings, which are kind of decent. I'm still a vampire and still happy with being a vampire, despite the introduction of the Sigic order and their quest line that gives you access to major expedition even while not being a vampire, but I'll get to that a little later. My Mundus Stone is the apprentice for a bonus to my spell damage, and I still use the Witch Mother's Potent Brew. I just find it so useful for the added Magicka recovery. This build can't function without that added Magicka recovery. The previous build might have, but this one just can't. With regards to my other consumables, they don't change. I still use tri-stat potions for the odd occasion when I run low on stamina. My main pots are these essence of immovability. Not only do I get immovability for 10.4 seconds, but I also increase my stealth detection by 20 meters for 15.7 seconds, as well as restoring Magicka and getting 20% Magicka recovery for 47.6 seconds. Now this is awesome, particularly when you go against Nightblades. It kind of gives you everything that you need. I don't need any pots to give me stamina back. The odd occasion that I do, I just pop one of these tri-stats and I'm good to go. And then I always keep some of these essence of invisibility, sorry, for when the fight becomes too intense. I know I will not survive it, especially if I'm in Imperial City and I'm carrying a lot of stones. I just pop one of these, I become invisible for almost 16 seconds, and I also gain major expedition, so I'm able to just move around quite quickly and then recall back to base. So these are my consumable. But now for the juicy bit. I still use Shackle Breaker, this time both on my weapons. Okay, so I don't have any fancy special weapons at the front or at the back. I don't use willpower swords anymore, because I use two 5-piece sets on both front bar and back bar. So front and back bar I've got a Shackle Breaker. On the front bar I've got two swords, and on the back bar I've got an ice staff. Now you could use, instead of two swords, you could use one two-hander sword, okay, one great sword, because its passives, just like dual wields, twin blade and blonde passive, which grant you 5% damage bonus to all of your skills, the two-handed passives still offer you that 5% bonus plus a 30% stamina recovery bonus for 10 seconds anytime you kill someone. So if you're having problems with stamina sustain and whatnot, you could still you could move to a two-hander. You just have to make sure that it is a sword for these skills. Okay, so heavy weapons, swords increase your damage done by 5%, and then you get Battle Rush here, increase your stamina recovery, well, by 15% with one skill point, and 30% with 2 skill points for 10 seconds after killing a target. So that is still very good. I prefer, just slightly, I still prefer using two swords, because I can put two glyphs on. One sword is Nernhund and the other one is infused. Now when it procs on when the enchantment procs on my infused weapon, I get that 452 extra spell damage. Some people like to run sharpened instead of infused, but sharpened doesn't really affect enemies with a damage shield. You can't crit them and you can't penetrate them. So this is why I'd rather have an infused weapon, well, one of my two swords as infused, because there's a 50% chance that this glyph might proc instead of this one. For my back bar, I went for an ice staff, because its passives enable me to block just as much as a sword and board. Okay, Ancient Knowledge. Equipping a frost staff reduces the cost of blocking by 36% and increases the amount of damage you block by 20%. So I can block as much as with sword and board, but it gives me access to elemental drain, to which I'll get to in a moment. So this is with regards to my weapons. On my back bar I also run a pretty cancerous poison, the one that increases the cost of both your magic and stamina abilities by 30%. Well, not yours, but your opponents. This because sometimes I come against builds that are very, very tanky, and because I'm a Magicka Templar, my burst ability is very, very low. and so the only way I can just defeat them is by wearing them out, and this just helps me out doing so. For my monster set, I still use Valkyrie Scoria, and for my second 5-piece, I use Rattle Cage. Now, Rattle Cage, I know that some people don't like it, but honestly I don't understand why. I can make it work so well. It gives me a ton of spell damage. It gives me major sorcery at all times, freeing up one slot for elemental drain, which ups my damage through the roof, and it gives me a nice maximum health bonus. So because Scoria and Rattle Cage, they both give me a max health bonus, and because I have a tri-stat glyph on all my large pieces, I end up with over 27k health in Cyrodiil, which is absolutely fundamental if you don't have any shields. Okay, if you're not a soak or a shield stacker in general, so very important that you have a health, a high health pool, because damage in Cyrodiil has become bursty again, especially with increased damage to your light attacks. You just want to make sure that you're able to resist a higher punch. Now I know some people that instead of 2 swords or a 2-hander sword, they would use either a lightning or a fire staff because of access to light attacks. Now, my personal preference and in my personal experience, I think that change is misguided, because yes, you have access to higher damage with your light and heavy attacks, but it doesn't really make much difference when you are in a CP campaign. So I would rather have either 2 swords or a 2-hander sword that buffs both my types of damage rather than just one of them, because you see, fire staff umps only your direct damage, single target direct damage, whereas lightning staff only ups your AoE kind of damage. And because we use both, I'd rather buff both of them with 2 swords or 1 2-hander. With regards to enchantments, as I said, tri-stat on all my large pieces and Magicka on all the rest. Everything is impenetrable. If you wanted, you could give up 1 or 2 impenetrables and put a sturdy on to help you mitigate not more damage, but use up less stamina when you block. Now for my jewelry, I've got a Rattle Cage jewelry that I have changed to arcane. You see, originally this jewelry came in healthy, apart from very rare jewelry that you could still drop off that dungeon, that dropped in arcane, but it was so difficult to find. I never found it, and so I just gave up. My RNG was so bad. But now that we have jewelry crafting, I could transmute this jewelry into arcane. Now let's move on to my skills. Now on my front bar, I've got reflective light for not just a nice little dot that can proc Scoria, but also because I get access to Major Prophecy for 7 seconds, which increases my critical rating and ups it to 32%. Then I've got Total Dark. Now you might be wondering, why aren't you using Purifying Light? Now Purifying Light helps you with burst, but I found that particularly when you're in a 1vx situation, once you apply it on an enemy, you don't really have enough time to focus all your damage onto that one enemy, and so you really don't benefit from that burst damage that comes at the end of the 6 seconds. So in a 1vx situation, I would rather use Total Dark. Now Total Dark not only does damage to the enemy every time they deal well, direct damage to you, but it also heals you, and the heal is also quite nice. So if you're in a bit of a sticky situation and you're on your back bar a lot, spamming heals, if you want to put yourself in an advantaged position again, what you want to do is to apply total dart to your enemy, and they will either heal yourself by attacking you, heal you by attacking you, or they will have to stop themselves to break themselves free. It gives them immunity to CC for 6 seconds, but still, I cannot emphasize just how good this skill is in a 1vx situation. If you're running in a small or large group, I would then encourage you to use Purifying Light instead. Then I've got Toppling Charge. I still can't play without a gap closer, but if you can, please put whatever you want. You can put Purifying Light instead of this one. But nowadays there's so many roll dodges, and Major Expedition is everywhere. You will find a lot of enemies that will just run away from you if they're under pressure, and I want to make sure that I can just catch up to them without any problems. Puncturing Sweeps is obviously my spammable, and then Radiant Oppression. Oh my gosh, it got buffed from 330% more damage when enemies were below 50% health. Now it goes up to 480%. I mean, I cannot really stress enough how good this skill is right now, and I know it's kind of being abused in PvP a little bit, especially when by people running in large groups, you know, spamming it against enemies at full health and just waiting for their mates to bring it below that 50% threshold and then disintegrate them. But it's so good, and I'm really glad that they've buffed it, because how often I was against very tanky builds that as soon as they dropped below 20%, and I would try to finish them off with Radiant Oppression, they would just heal themselves back up. And this is the thing, it hits a lot harder than it used to, but it's still a channeled ability. Okay, so it can be interrupted, it can be annulled by line of sight, and it can be out-healed by players that know how to play. So yes, I'm really glad that they buffed it, and I don't think that this is an over buff. I think this is a long overdue buff, so I'm really glad about this one. And then I still use Soul Assault for my ultimate. With my weapon glyphs proc, it goes up to just over 77k magic damage over 3.5 seconds. Find it particularly useful against Stamina Nightblades, and well, any stamina build that will not be able to kind of heal themselves up as much in just one click. So yeah, Soul Assault is incredibly good. If you wanted to increase your Magicka pool, you could use the Mage's skill ultimate. You could use Comet, okay, Ice Comet, or the other morph, and you could use Inner Light instead of Reflective Light. So that will up your Magicka by quite a bit. Still use Elusive Mist. If you don't like being a vampire, you could not be a vampire, and instead of Elusive Mist, you could use Race Against Time, which is a skill in the Sigic Order skill line, and that gives you Major Expedition, and it reduces the cost of sprint by 50% for 3 seconds. So if you'd rather not be a vampire, please be my guest, and instead of Elusive Mist, use Race Against Time. But I prefer being a vampire because of the Undeath passive and because of access to Devouring Swarm. It enables me to be both defensive and offensive at the same time. This is the only skill that enables me to do that. This is the problem with, particularly with 1vxing with Magicka Templars. You cannot you cannot be offensive and defensive at the same time. If you're under pressure, you need to swap to your back bar and just spam Honor the Dead and try to, you know, find a moment where you can catch your breath and then go back to being offensive. This skill, on the other hand, enables me to do damage while healing myself. So when I'm under pressure, I just pop Devouring Swarm. I try to play with other skills, other ultimates, but this is just the best one. So this is why I'm not moving away from being a vampire. Then we've got Extended Ritual, which again cleanses up to 5 harmful effects from yourself immediately, and also it heals you a little bit by just over 1200 health every 2 seconds for 24 seconds. And then there's also Channel Focus. Channel Focus is just so good. Now you get that Magicka return that basically equals to 420, I believe. No, sorry, 480 Magicka recovery. You get it back for the whole duration of this spell. Before, you could enjoy it only if you stayed in the circle and up to 8 seconds after you left. But this time, once you pop it, you've got it for 20 seconds, and it's awesome. Both the Magicka recovery bonus and as well as major resolve and major ward. But while you stand in the circle, your major resistances go up by 50%, making you even more tanky. And then last but not least, I use Elemental Drain, and this is why I use an Ice Staff on the back bar, because Elemental Drain is from a Destro Staff, is a Destro Staff skill. Now, it gives me access to Major Breach, okay, that reduces the enemy spell resistance by 5280. Now, together with my champion points, this build reaches a spell penetration of 9343. Even though I'm wearing full heavy, well, 5 heavy, 1 light, 1 medium to get access to the Undaunted Metal passive that increases my max stats by 6%. Even though I'm wearing full heavy, I penetrate just like a light armor build, if not more. Okay, this is just incredible. It's just an incredible skill. And not only that, this skill applies minor Magicka Steel to the enemy for 24 seconds, causing you and your allies to restore 300 Magicka every 1 second when damaging them. Now, this means that if you keep your pressure against the enemy, that Magicka Steel equals to 600 Magicka regeneration, which is phenomenal. Previously, for my sustain, in my previous build, I used Lich that gave me just under 1000 every 3 minutes. This one gives me 600 all the time, as long as I keep doing damage. So, for example, if you're against an enemy, you just apply that skill. You just apply Elemental Drain, and then if you apply a dot on them, even if you're running around, you keep on damaging them and you keep getting Magicka back. Now that Magicka that you restore both through that skill, both through Elemental Drain and Channel Focus, goes through your Mist form, so you can still get some Magicka back while in Mist form. So I think this is it for skills. Let's move on to my champion points. Here they are very quickly: 51 into Warlord, 43 into Mooncalf, 75 into Arcanist, 7 into Tenacity. Mind the fact that you have an Ice Staff on your back bar enables you to heavy attack against enemies if for whatever reason you're low on Magicka, and get some of that back. Previously with Sword and Board you couldn't do it. Now I've got 18 into Tumbling, 66 into a Shadow Ward, 28 into Earthborn, 56 into Elemental Expert, 52 into Spell Erosion, 37 into shattering blows against shield stackers, 61 into thaumaturge, since a lot of your damage is damage over time, 51 into ironclad, 33 into spell shield, 51 into resistant, 49 into hardest, 56 into elemental defender. I always prioritize elemental resistance because I'm a vampire, so I take more damage off fire damage. And then 20 points into heavy armor focus. So there you have it, my Conqueror build, volume 3 I should say, my complete rework. I was also quite glad to get a title with conquering in it, but anyway, this is just me being silly. But yeah, so this is a fantastic build. I really encourage you to try it out. It works great in Cyrodiil. I'm working now on an OCP battleground version of my Conqueror build. Will come out as soon as it's ready. Until then, try this out. Let me know what you think about it. If for whatever reason I've forgot mentioning anything, just ask me questions in the comment section down below, and I promise I will reply as soon as possible. Thank you so much for following me. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers. I really want to thank you all for your support. And this is still something that I do in that time and just for fun. But it's really nice to see the channel grow, and I'll only have you to thank. So thank you so much, and I'll see you out there. Bye.